So did everybody get enough time to eat?
Yeah.
All right, good. Then we timed this perfectly. Sorry we're late. Our home was being stolen. That is our trailer. I'm here with my amazing fiance Macy, who was driving when we got pulled over earlier this afternoon on our way here. And our 19-foot travel trailer that you don't see attached to the back of our vehicle was confiscated. It's being held for ransom now for driving on one of the wonderful New York state roads where they don't allow commercial vehicles. So thank you for being understanding of this, and thanks to Rich and Lisa for making this possible. Really appreciate it. You guys are by far, I'm pretty sure at this point, the most patient crowd that we've had on the tour. And I'm shocked that any of you even bother to stay this late, but I guess showing up with a good story kind of helps, right? And we've been billing this as the American Campfire Freedom Tour. I'm sorry, that's a bit of false advertising. They couldn't get a permit to do a fire out here. But it might be more accurately described as the Kokesh avoids his probation officer tour. And so far it's going very well. We haven't seen him since we left California. But you know, I get to hang out with the most amazing people and meet the most incredible people on this tour. Of people who come out who are interested, who are, you know, all different phases of waking up, but everybody who's passionate enough about freedom to be engaged intellectually in this process. And everywhere we go, I get to ask this question to start things off. It's a lot of fun. And everywhere we go, different communities, and if you, Mike, you can't give out the answers to this one. Mike knows all the answers. We got to hang out with him in Manchester. So if you know the answers to this, you might have seen it on YouTube. Okay, good. Then you might know. And Macy knows, and she always tries. Like, if you guys take too long, she'll cheat and help you, and like, you know, whisper the answers from the back of the room. But the question is, it's a really fun one. What do you see people doing differently in their lives, especially in their daily lives, as a result of an awareness of the message of freedom?
Building food forests so that people don't actually have to purchase it, they can just go pick it as a citizen of that area.
Growing your own food, absolutely. A beautiful trend that we see, right? A lot of other things connected to that.
Growing your own medicine.
Growing your own medicine, legally or illegally. Even more fundamental than that. Geez, are we starting with drugs just like that in Connecticut? Is that how it is here? Because, you know, in some places it's like the last thing in smoking marijuana. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. There was a little housekeeping we got to do before we get into this. Raise your hand if you're a cop. We haven't caught anybody that way yet. But I should remind you that you are not going to be held liable for anything that you say here tonight. So when the government says this is safe and this is not safe, right? Kind of question that a little more effectively, understanding the nature of government. What else?
All right.
Investing in lead and brass.
Investing in lead and brass. What else with that? What other metals? Obviously.
Gold, silver.
All right. Well, back to the metal and brass. What's the reason for that?
Because we have to be able to stand up against the government.
Well, standing up against the government is a hypothetical. We hope it doesn't come to that.
No.
In an individual case, obviously there are times when it comes to that. But even just from a more mundane, day-to-day, practical reason, it's just taking charge of your own self-defense when you realize that calling the police is usually not in the best interest of your personal safety, right?
Yes.
We're gonna make sure that we have what we need to take care of ourselves, and you're not gonna call 911 if you don't have to. What else? What else do you guys see?
Avoiding taxes.
That's the other one everybody has to wait for. That's like, Macy has to be like, not paying taxes. That's great. Obviously, when you realize that the government uses so much of the money that you give it to hurt people, and it's not just illegal tax evasion, but legal tax avoidance, right? A lot of people are re-engineering their lives to minimize their tax liability, doing things as an LLC or some other corporation on paper or nonprofit or doing business under the table. And you know how crazy that is? There's actually a book now called 3 Felonies a Day, because that's how many the average American commits. And most of them are in the course of normal financial transactions, right? Barter is a big one that goes along with that. And yet, even barter, while legal, it's not if it's worth more than $20 and you don't report it to the IRS.
Really?
Not really an enforceable or very commonly enforced thing, but if they want to throw the book at you, they have lots of other ways to. All right, so what else do you guys see?
Big one for me is stop asking for permission to do things.
Absolutely, not asking for permission. Changes your relationship with authority, doesn't it?
A lot of people are defending their homes against fraudulent mortgages. People are defending their homes against fraudulent mortgages.
Fraudulent mortgages, absolutely. Well, standing up to just for your rights in general, standing up for your property rights, whatever form that takes. What, you know, with its bank, whether it's with banks, which you can say, or maybe they're part of the government, right? All right, what else?
Energy production.
Energy production, right? Being off grid or being independent, right? Is that what you're referring to? Excellent, absolutely.
That's big.
Now, there's one that, I mean, maybe, now that you guys have got like all the hard ones out of the way, there's some other fun ones that people usually don't get to, and I'll give you a clue for one. The more male-dominated the audience, the less likely we are to hear one of these that I'm thinking.
Wine ass? Wine ass?
What?
Wine ass?
Wine ass?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. I don't think so. What else?
Taking control of their bodies.
Taking control of your body and your health. Yes, very comprehensive. There's a lot more to that, more than even just what we mentioned about food and pharmaceuticals, right? But fitness, and that's something I'm getting towards. Education. But what about fitness? You said what about media? Broadening it. Well, in some ways it's, you know, well, broadening your sources, not watching television. I might sum that up as being a conscientious consumer of information, right? But that's not a gender-related one at all.
Education on nutrition.
Education on nutrition, right? Just challenging, not taking authority's word for it, right? Well, I heard, what was that? Childbirth, yes. Now I know that happens a lot more often with women than men, but that wasn't what I was getting at. But yes, childbirth, absolutely. What goes along with that?
Marriage.
Well, usually,
Immunization.
yes, vaccinations, right? Well, gee, the government said that my child needs all these shots, so I'm just going to give them to him. You don't think that way anymore, right? There's one other big aspect of that, right? Of raising children, homeschooling or unschooling, right? Not trusting your government with your child's mind. How about that? There's one more in fitness I'm looking for. Yoga! Oh my gosh, we got it!
I am man
Yes.
too.
Thank you. And yoga is, for most people who haven't experienced it, don't know, it was originally developed as a warm-up for meditations. And this is kind of getting to the more important point of all this. But if you've never done yoga, it's always cool to share this with people, because it really is a gift to bring yoga into your life. Don't worry, I'm not going to make the speech about that. I could though. You owe it to yourself to try it at least 2 or 3 times in a couple different formats. There's a huge range from extremely calm, slow, meditative, restorative to Bikram hot yoga, 90 minutes, will kick your ass as hard as any Marine Corps calisthenics workout. But at the end of any good session, you end with 5 to 15 minutes of relaxed meditation in that state of complete exhaustion and connectedness with your body, and get the chance to turn your attention inward. And sometimes people point out meditation, and it's not quite common yet in our movement. Did you guys see that there's a deeper trend here beyond the philosophy of, the philosophy paradigm shift that we talk about in terms of people learning more about freedom. Now, how many of you have been just around the movement long enough to get a sense of the nature of how people wake up and know, like, viscerally that we are on the right side of history?
Yeah.
Yeah? It's a beautiful thing, because people don't wake up and go, yeah, freedom, individual rights, liberty, this is awesome, and then like wake up the next day, fuck it, never mind, we're just gonna point guns at everybody I don't like. I mean, it's obvious. You don't have to be around long to figure that out and be like, I see where this is going.
Yeah.
But at a deeper level, there's another trend that you see especially prominent in the movement of people who are aware of freedom specifically as a moral code, as an ethical code, as a philosophy, as an attitude towards life in general, right? Of living better, of being more conscientious, of being better engaged with the world. We were talking about nonviolent communication. Any fans of nonviolent communication here? Yeah. Oh, yeah, good to see a lot of hands. Good. And normally, we get a spattering. That was pretty good. And if you want to think, a lot of libertarians, they hear nonviolent communication and they go, it's communication, of course it's nonviolent, fuck you! And you go, yeah, that's the problem. Right? But the technique is of how to maximize the effectiveness of our communication, to maximize the exchange of value in every conversation. It's a really beautiful thing that leads you to be able to relate to people better. And you guys notice that, right? I mean, would you rather hang out with someone who lives by the non-aggression principle or not? Kind of an easy choice, right? Now, I want to go back for a second, because you guys ruined it for me by like being too smart with the pharmaceutical thing up front. But we all know why marijuana is illegal, right?
Yes. It's useful.
It's a gateway drug.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a gateway to freedom. Because you can't smoke pot and not realize the government's totally full of shit. And then you go, gee, what else are they lying about? And the medical stuff, like the pharmaceuticals, and we know the history, right? William Randolph Hearst and the paper industry and all the other interests like the pharmaceuticals and prison industrial complex and law enforcement and the quasi-judicial system. All of these interests that now have an interest in marijuana staying illegal. And by the way, is this not a beautiful time to be alive, to just appreciate? And I don't mean it in all the broader sense of what we're talking about, but like right now, like this year or two of American history, that this is the end of the beginning of the end of the war on drugs.
Feels like it too.
Yeah! And I mean, it's like a chunk of an iceberg that you see just like, there's a crack forming and it's starting to shift and just
boosh.
And you know what a major chunk of the government racket this is? Banking, war on drugs. I mean, there's not a lot at that level. Welfare, I mean, obviously the big institutions of the government. But marijuana is the underpinning of that in the United States, in the world, essentially. And that's going away right now. And the conversation has shifted. And I remember, well, back, when California was first considering medical, and it was like, oh yeah, dude, it's for my glaucoma. All those corny jokes. As though they're so worn out now, they're not even funny anymore, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, the glaucoma one, it comes with pressure on your cornea. Like it really is not just a vision impairing, but like a horrifically painful condition. I mean, you imagine that, the pressure of extra fluid in your eyeball? Smoking pot actually reduces the pressure. They didn't even know how it worked back then. But it was like, and now, as it's easing up, oh, by the way, it cures seizures in seizure kids too. I'm sorry, but if you knew that was a possibility and you let this happen, you were a part of this, there's a special place in hell. I mean, really, you kept seizure medication from children. And that's not to mention all the other costs of drug war. But the conversation has shifted from, well, pot should be legal because it's good medicine, or pot should be legal because it's safer than alcohol. Now, you know this, Pot should be legal because I decide what I put in my body, not you. Isn't it beautiful? Like, the awareness has shifted. The conversation around this has changed entirely. But if they make pot illegal for all of those reasons, and as popular as it still is, ubiquitous in society, there are other things that they have to make really, really, really illegal compared to pot, right? Like what?
Mushrooms.
Mushrooms, DMT,
Free market.
the free market, yeah. Freedom.
Gun.
One more big one. Acid. Speech. MDMA was originally developed as a couples therapy drug in the 80s, and at some point someone said, hey, they're having fun with this now too, gotta make it illegal. Actually, I don't think that's true at all. But that's what they want you to think. Oh, well, it was somehow in a twisted way, at least in our best attempt to, there was some connection to the public interest. It's an extremely safe substance in and of itself. But it's another great threat to the pharmaceutical industry. And I only found this out recently, and it killed me, because I went through, I ran a peer support group for veterans with PTSD when I got back from Iraq, and I was living in Washington, D.C., working with Iraq veterans against the war. And it was clear as day that the guys who drank themselves into bottles would destroy their lives, and at least the guys who smoked pot could control their symptoms to go through the kind of talk therapy that you really need to deal with PTSD. And it took a lot of time, and it took a lot of heartache, and a lot of guys didn't make it before they took their own lives in that process. And you know what? Fucking Molly. 2 hits, 2 supervised sessions with a therapist, 2 weeks apart, cures PTSD in a clinical definition sense for most of the patients who take it.
That's crazy.
You can, and even today, with it as legal as it is, pumped up by the black market, you can get 2 hits for about 10, 20 bucks each. Probably less on the Silk Road, or whatever is the new Silk Road now. Of course, I would have no idea. If they allowed MDMA to be manufactured legally, 2 hits would cost, it would cost less to manufacture than to package and deliver it. You want to compare that to the cost of a lifetime of Prozac? When I went to the VA and told them I was having trouble sleeping, they gave me 5 prescriptions, 3 of which had suicide listed as a side effect. One of them was Prozac, because I was a vet who had trouble sleeping. I mean, you see where this goes, right? So what do they make really, really illegal? I mean, MDMA is pretty bad, but you get caught with acid. You want to know what acid cures?
Structure of society.
Statism. I'm not kidding. And I'm going to explain why. I'm going to prove it to you. If you give me the time this evening, we're going to get into this. To everyone's absolute satisfaction. There are a few things that libertarians have all these fantasies about how the state's going to end, right? Like, hey, if everybody just stopped paying their taxes tomorrow. Hey, if everybody just stood up to cops. Hey, if everybody just did this. If everybody just... And there's actually one thing that I do recommend that I do think would end statism as fast as people understanding it, and that's nonviolent communication. But acid's pretty close. Right? Psychedelics in general. And for those of you who don't know, on my YouTube channel, I recorded my first 6 DMT experiences, and I don't know, like, what motivated me to do that. The fact that nobody on YouTube had yet, I guess. So, hey, why not? And it was a great way to show people that, all of these things, and here's my safety note, all use of substances, all consumption of food even, comes with an inherent risk that should be understood carefully and used deliberately. And all of these things that we talk about are elements of the human existence that we all owe it to ourselves to educate ourselves on. And when you have the opportunities, if it's appropriate for you where you are in your life, to enjoy those experiences, get the most value that you can out of them in a safe, knowledgeable, honest, deliberate, and purposeful way, and really get the potential out of those. So with acid, there's a certain, don't worry, I won't ask you to raise your hands. There's a certain feeling that's chemically induced that a lot of people get through a lot of the other things we talked about earlier, but You guys want to feel a little more free in about 30 seconds? You guys up for a little trick?
Yes.
All right. So you close your eyes, take a deep inhale, and consider for just a moment that everything is right in the universe.
Oh, yeah.
And take a deep exhale and slowly open your eyes. Do you see what we did there? And if you didn't, you'll understand soon enough. The feeling that comes with that includes a certain amount of self-acceptance, self-awareness, self-knowledge. And there's a reason the state can't let people get that. Now, when I was in Fallujah in 2004, I was the guy who always got up early to tell jokes and stories and sing songs. I mean, like, I was singing Yellow Submarine in combat, like, you know, waking up. Just the corniest stuff I could come up with. And I was in that sort of Zen state of engagement. You know, you've seen people in this, you know, in every field of human endeavors, when they're doing something that calls upon all of their talent and skill and causes them to just truly engage with something and light up and be alive and purposeful in a way that maybe nothing else does for them. And I felt that when I was in Fallujah. But I felt the same thing, even better, when I was in jail for civil disobedience. And I found myself in solitary confinement on my government-induced, taxpayer-funded spiritual retreat in Washington, D.C. in a beautiful gated community with meticulously manicured facilities and 24-hour security. Some would say overbearing, I would just say very friendly staff. And every chance I got, you know, when you're like a ward of the state, here's a fun one. How many of you have been to jail before? Liars. All right, counting overnights.
I was.
A couple. Really?
They want to put me in jail right now for a week.
If you do, just make sure you enjoy it.
I don't know the plan, actually.
When I was in jail, I was still doing a podcast, and I would call my producer, and they would record it and then post it online. So the guards that wore name tags tended to follow the rules around me. And as a ward of the state, when you say, hey, I need to talk to you for a minute, can you come here? You know, they do. So every chance I got, whether it was, you know, a guard going through for food or for checks or just to harass people, whatever it was, hey, can I talk to you for a second? You're a free, beautiful, independent human being. You should never let anyone tell you otherwise. Have a nice day. You can laugh at that because you know what the response is for most of those guys hearing that in that situation, right?
Yeah.
How is this guy on the inside of the cage happier than I am on the outside? Right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's because you dress up in a silly costume every day. I'm in an orange jumpsuit, but you work a terrible 9 to 5 as a cog in the machine, and your boss doesn't give a damn about you. I work for people who care a lot more about what we're doing. I'm here for a whole other reason. And there was something that I got out of that experience that just made real for me a part of the human condition, a part of our existence that we seem to take for granted, that we just don't, we can't remind ourselves enough to stay conscious of the fact that we choose our demeanor at all times. Our state of mind, our attitude is a choice. Every bad day is self-imposed. Why would you ever choose to be anything less than perfectly happy? And sure, we can have the whole range of healthy emotional reactions, but what we do with them is always our choice. And the sad thing is how we give that up. You know, we talk a lot about the state coercion, right? And the fact that everything they do is backed up with violence. What's the main way they really control us? With words.
Yeah.
Words.
Words.
Words. We change the words.
Fancy words.
Government goes away. Like, that's all. It's words. It's mind control. And it happens from a very early age. From parents, from school, from any authority figure, from society itself. We are taught violent communication. Not just to each other, to manipulate each other by emotions, but to deny our own will. And in a sense, we're very comfortable with the outside of this, saying like, hey, I want you to be free. My world is better if you can prosper, if your will as an individual consciousness is respected.
Yes.
And then what do we do to ourselves?
Lock it.
We talk down to ourselves. We live in fear and insecurity. And we allow even just a hint of that that's imposed to us from the outside to affect our behavior, to be intimidated. And I wish I could say that this is the secret and you're going to hear this and get it and it's all over. But no, I mean, I was afraid earlier today when we were getting pulled over. But we were able to, as you'll see from the video in the next couple days, handle it rationally and deal with it in a positive, constructive manner. And there's something so important about this that changes your attitude towards activism when you get this. And activism is just anything that you do that's not for yourself, really. To serve, well, it's still for yourself, to serve your highest vision of what humanity can and should be, right? Anything you do beyond taking care of your animal needs should be included in activism. So what does it mean when, with a boot heel literally on your neck, you can look up at that guy and smile? There's no anger. There's no more hatred. No resentment even. Pity. Empathy. Understanding. I mean, you don't think cops are, I mean, certainly we've seen egos enjoying being cops, but do you think that the cop who beats up protesters, say, is a well-adjusted human being who goes home to a happy, loving household every night?
No.
How about the politicians lying through their teeth every day? You think the people who seek power over others, the ego gratification that comes with that, do you think that makes them happier?
No.
To win the next election? To advance to the next political position?
It's a whole that can't be said.
Or how about the bankers? And I'm sure you all know the centrality of the banking racket, the monetary system, to the racket of government itself. George Carlin said trying to make yourself happy with money is like trying to satisfy your hunger by duct taping sandwiches to your body. So we're very comfortable talking about the external effects of government propaganda. And a lot of us think that when we become more conscientious consumers of information, we break free of that bullshit. I don't care if you've got 40 acres and an earthship and a greenhouse and chickens and solar power and all of that, and you never pay your taxes, you're totally off the grid. If you spend all day staring at your computer screen being angry, you're not free. They win, you lose, end of story. I had to give up watching bad cop porn at some point deliberately and say, I'm not going to do this anymore. They want you to feel, we know this, right? They want you to be afraid. They want you to be angry. They want you to look up to government as this authority, parental figure that is all necessary, all knowing, and essential to survival of society. And everybody waking up at some point has to be brought down by this, right? I mean, if you don't, you're not human. Nobody goes, gee, the world's more fucked up than I ever imagined possible. Yay! So, how many of you felt angry at some point in the course of waking up? Yeah? All right. How many? And for the first time, you go, well, maybe I'm angry at the right things, right? And when you realize you're more than 50 times likely to be killed by a cop than by a terrorist, maybe there was a little fear, being afraid of the right things for the right time, yeah? You don't have to be afraid to raise your hand for this one. It's not that bad, it's okay. They're wrong friends. How about sadness or depression, right? I mean, I've seen activists, especially the ones that get caught up in like the bad cop videos. It's depressing, holy crap. But even like deeper than that, just to step back and look at the scope of the destruction of war, of the economic opportunities lost, of the lives ruined, of the entire cost of statism throughout the course of human history. And a lot of people are very motivated by this. They start waking up, they start paying attention, they go, yes, I'm passionate now. And they go out on the street corner, right, with their signs and their bullhorns, and they say, now join me in my fear and my anger and my depression. Some of you been that guy before? Well, what's the response that you get?
You're crazy.
Fuck you. I'm going back to watching Dancing with the Stars and being a happy little wage slave. Why would I want any of that? But why would you even want to share something if it makes your life worse? We've all chosen our worldview. We've all chosen to embrace the essential truths of freedom on our own. And even if you think that it, is it just by virtue of being the truth is enough, if your relationship to the truth is to be angry or afraid or depressed, maybe it's the wrong truth. Maybe you're not doing it right. And by the way, I'm guiltier of this than anyone here, swear to God. There's a big contradiction in our movement. We tell people we want government to have as small a role in your life as possible, but we want to talk about it all the time. I used to do a 3-hour podcast 5 days a week. Whew. But people are moving past that. The culture of the movement is shifting. So like any good politician, I see a riot, I jump in front and I call it a parade. The culture of the freedom movement is shifting towards this awareness. We've been fooled into thinking that this is a political movement. And if the political conversation is, who do we point the guns of government to organize society? And our premise is from the beginning, no, that's not valid. This is an anti-political movement. You ever start talking to people and go, oh, no, I don't do politics. Well, politics will keep doing you, but they don't want to hear that, right? Because we get sucked into this. We're an anti-political movement, a philosophy movement, a morals movement, an ethics movement, but we want to go, oh, I got to put on my suit and tie and comb my hair and tell people I'm a good little wage slave with my 9 to 5 and I pay my taxes just like you. And you know what they say? And I've tried to deliver the message like that. You smell just like all the other assholes that are totally full of shit. The people that are ready to hear this don't want to hear it from someone who hasn't figured out how it improves their life. And some people can say, just on a matter of security, I'm safer because of this knowledge. Well, guess what? If you feel safer, you should have a little room to feel happier as well. And be able to share that with someone. Because I guarantee if you go to someone with the perspective of, I'm right, you're wrong, zero-sum game, let's argue, let's debate. You're going to be like Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill over and over and over again, winning votes, petitions, Facebook flame wars, yelling matches at bars. I mean, you all know the guy that was converted because he lost that Facebook debate, right? Yeah, me neither. But if you go to people and you say, hey, I've got this philosophy, I've got this perspective that's really beautiful. I enjoy it. It's empowered me to look at the world a better way. Oh, and by the way, it's made me freer. It's given me the tools and the perspective to actually live more free in my life. And as a result, I'm happier. I'm healthier. You want to hear about that?
I do.
I don't know, man. Who's going to build the roads? You just don't get that anymore. You ever feel like just arguing for freedom, you've already lost? Now, who's the first one to win every argument? The first one who stops arguing, right? The people who came up with like oral hygiene didn't have to argue with people about it. You want to keep your teeth or not? All he had to do was smile. God, that sounds corny as hell, doesn't it?
It was good.
It's the first time I've like made the connection between the tooth analogy and smiling to share the message. Did it work?
It did, yeah.
Sort of. So let's take it back to acid for a second, shall we? I mean, that feeling of acceptance. It's so important to this. To just to relating to people even. But why can't government let people have that? And that feeling comes from a lot of things, that everything is right in the universe, whatever it is. Meditation, yoga, exercise. I used to run barefoot, that was my big meditation. That person who has that kind of emotional freedom can no longer be manipulated by fear. That person is beyond the government's reach. A person cannot be controlled or manipulated or exploited. And we are in a position to share that with people. Just by having the understanding of freedom that we all have now. That is within our grasp. So when I was in jail, I was able to do, partly in my head and partly from all the wonderful books that people sent me, a survey of the literature of our movement, of humanity's quest towards freedom, at least a very cursory one. I mean, going back to Socrates and Plato, whom I studied in undergrad, to Smith, to Locke, to Spooner, to Mises, to Hayek, to Rand, to Rothbard, to Tonkin, to Dr. Paul the Senior. So many people have been trying to convey this message. And you know, one of the things I've gotten to learn from traveling around the country and talking to different people is get a sense of how people wake up. We do a very dangerous thing for our cause when we so often mythologize the experience of waking up. Do you guys know what I mean by that?
I know exactly.
Because you've heard this before, Mike. Cheater. What's that?
I'll tell you all about it later.
Okay. People tell me, how many people of you have seen the Jefferson dance party video where I got body slammed by the cops? And well, that's the least number of hands we've gotten for that. Okay, you've probably seen it. It was 2011 and might not have known it was me. I got body slammed by a cop for dancing in public. YouTube gold, right? Duh. People come to me still to this day. We've had, you know, I mean, really probably like every other event, someone has come to us and said, that video woke me up. And every time they're lying. Nobody went, oh, whoa, did you see that dude get choke slammed and kneed in the ribs? And all those guys get beat up and arrested for dancing in public? And the Fed. There's a bit of a leap there, right? But for some people, it raised the cognitive dissonance that they had to satisfy, they had to figure out. And by the way, all of us super nerdy types who can admit what it means to be a victim and then have the intellectual integrity and the curiosity and the right recipe of dissatisfaction and being just enough of an outcast to question the system, to go and figure this out and sit through months of Adam versus the Man podcasts. We're already here. But people don't wake up in conversation. They don't wake up by being challenged or threatened. They usually don't wake up with more data either. It's not a matter of more information. It's all out there. It's already in all of our heads. We all know how government actually practically works. It's the story, the framework that fits it all together. And the way people embrace this is on their own, in quiet contemplation. You guys know the joke, right? What's the difference between a libertarian or a statist and a libertarian?
6 months.
About 6 months, right? Well, I think we've got it down to a week of watching YouTube videos and reading Wikipedia articles. It is accelerating. It's very exciting to see. But still, for me, it was a book. For some people, it's a long course of answering all their questions. But what about this? But what about that? And so while I was in jail, I realized that this book hadn't been written, that freedom needed to be written, that there was an easier way, that there was, I mean, if nothing else, I could take all of your best status updates and compile it into one book. That's kind of how we did it. But we wrote this book to be the quickest way to take someone from zero to I get it. It's 100 pages, it's a free audiobook, it's free in every digital format possible. And I've been issuing people a challenge on the tour. First, read the book. That's not supposed to be the challenge. I know it's you got to twist people's arms to get them to read a book these days, right? But the good news is it's 2015. You can listen to the audiobook and tell people that you read it. So if you really, I'll put you on the spot right now. How many of you, raise your hand if you can honestly say that everyone in your immediate family who you are in regular contact with understands why you care about freedom? You understand? Okay, thank you. You guys see the problem with that, though, right? And that's pretty typical of what we've seen on this tour so far, even. And we've wanted to make this as easy as possible, and this is part of the challenge. Because if you're in a situation with someone in a regular relationship in your family, you should be able to go to them and say, Mom, Dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, whatever, I love you, you love me, we care about each other, we're in each other's lives. Hey, this is something I care about that I would really appreciate if you understood as something about me that's important to me. What you do with it is up to you. But just as someone who cares about me, would you mind, and I'll do this with you, would you mind taking 15 minutes? You can read the first 9 pages of this book. The whole thing is summed up in the first chapter. Can you just read the first 9 pages of this book? Or, we'll listen to the first 15 minutes of the audiobook on our way to school, work, whatever today. I'll sit and listen to it with you. But it would mean a lot to me if you would just consider this. Because it's of value to me. And I think if only for understanding me, but on a whole other level as well, it should be of a great value to you. And if they say no, in the next month, I'm sorry, I don't have 15 minutes for your politics, for your silly philosophy, you should probably reconsider those relationships. But I guarantee if you go about it like this, you're not going to jeopardize them. You guys tired of being the one at the Thanksgiving dinner table that everybody is sick of hearing from by now?
Yeah.
How to lose friends and not influence people? Treat this like a political conversation. But the message shouldn't be hard to share. We shouldn't be arguing with people. So we've also been asking along the way, how many of us do you think there are? Now, that's a huge question, can be interpreted a lot of ways. I want to make it a little more specific for you. Are there any fans of Sam Konkin here? I mentioned his name earlier. Excellent. Godfather of agorism, the practice of counter-economics, conducting all of your economic affairs outside of the purview of government. Very fancy intellectual justification for not letting them steal from you with taxes. But also a very powerful way for the movement to move forward, right? We didn't get into it too much, but gold, silver, Bitcoin, all those things relate to not being stolen from as much. But more importantly, he had a joke he liked to tell. There are 2 definitions of libertarian. First one is anyone who calls themselves a libertarian. You guys see a problem with that? This is just going to become like conservative and liberal and be generally vague, meaningless terms. Because then you get, Bill Maher and Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck and Bill Maher calling themselves libertarians. Any of you guys familiar with Bill Maher's show, New Rules? New rule, Bill. You can't donate $1 million to the Obama campaign and tell me it's because you believe in freedom. Sorry, not buying that. All right, so Sam Conkin's second definition. Anyone who agrees with me on absolutely everything. You guys know that guy, right? I think some of you are uncomfortably going, I think I've been that guy. You can't be right about everything all the time. That's my job. Don't worry about it. But I'd like to suggest then a different definition. And I talk about like the broader freedom movement of humanity, but there's obviously a core of people who are conscientiously engaged in moving humanity forward in this direction. So I describe it as people who can articulate freedom as a principle and at least attempt to apply it consistently. And we're all going to come to different conclusions, right? But by that definition, how many of us do you think there are? No cheating. Anybody want to put out a guess?
In the world or in the country?
In the United States. And for reference, 1% would be 3.2 million.
Wow.
Less than that. So?
100th of a percent.
A hundredth of a percent. Let's see, 3.2 million would be 32,000. I think we're a little more than
I
32,000.
said third of a percent.
A third of a
I said
percent.
$1 million amongst the whole population.
A million. That's the consensus we've come to, actually. Just under a third of a percent. Kind of puts it in perspective for you, doesn't it?
How many people in this country?
320 something million.
Oh,
But
shit.
we're gonna do another little fun hand raising exercise here now. This is we've only done this once before, so we'll see how it goes. How many of you can say that your final acceptance of the truth of freedom, your full adoption and embracing of this message came about in the last 5 years? Whoa, oh, I almost want to count now. Was that somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4? Right? What does that tell you?
It's gonna explode.
The growth, it's not technically exponential. It can't be. Because the limit is 100% of the population, right? It's an S-curve of adoption. But where we are now in this S-curve, and if you look back to the 70s, when the Libertarian Party was founded and John Birch Society was the only game in town, by some estimates, less than 100,000 of us then. And the definition had to be broader probably. And in the year 2000, for those of you who were aware and around in the movement back then, still only a few, maybe a couple, 200,000-300,000. And you see now, if we're about 1 million now, and let's say that only half of you got here in the last 5 years. You think we can keep that up until we get to critical mass?
Yes, definitely.
You think the average libertarian, or by people who meet that criteria of 1 million, you think on average we can wake up one person each over the next 5 years? Can we do that?
Oh yeah.
Pretty conservative estimate, if you ask me. Because it's not even a week of watching YouTube videos and reading Wikipedia articles. Now, it's a 3-hour audiobook and it's free. And the challenge is, if you read it and you can't find a better way for you to, or if you can find a better way for you to wake someone else up than sharing that, then you do that. But if you can't, you share that until you do. Because I guarantee you, and I can tell you this from all my years of activism, and God, I feel like I've been doing this too long now. I got started in 2000, early 2007, right after I got out of the Marines with the Iraq Veterans Against the War. And it's accelerating. And the most satisfaction that I've ever got, and I know from what it's meant for me, that the most value that I ever share with people is represented when they come to me, and we get emails all the time from people who say, "You woke me up." I don't think that's really true either. Help people wake themselves up. And that's what it takes, right? Encouragement and inspiration and making it easy for them and showing them how there's of immediate value to this right now. So if you find that and you accept that metric of your activism, I mean, how many minds can you free? I guarantee you that is what you are going to find the most satisfying. So I'll just wrap up by taking a couple minutes to talk about who we are as a movement right now. And again, it's a very cool point in history to appreciate this. I mean, just looking at that big hypothetical S-curve, right? To know that this is accelerating. That if we just double every 5 years, critical mass, depending on how you want to define that, is at most a few decades away. It's not the captains of the football teams and cheerleading squads and student body presidents who are the first to challenge the system. And I've had a sense of this for a while, but recently I've been tempted to quote the Apple commercial from the 90s, you know, think different, right? And it goes, "Here's to the crazy ones." But you all know the cliche, there's nothing good about being labeled well-adjusted to a sick society. Here's to the rebels and the misfits and the outcasts. Sure. A lot of us are here because we have felt something in our souls that separated us from authoritarianism in society, something that we had to rebel against. Or some pain of statism that's made us feel like outcasts, or somehow less appreciated by society. They say, "Here's to the square pegs and the round holes." Well, fuck that, you're not calling me a square. We're the oversized round pegs that they can't jam into the square holes that government has laid out for us. And you know, Macy and I have been living out of the trailer that's not with us anymore for the last 9 months.
24 hours, no break.
Awesome.
We just got engaged. If you ever want an easy round of applause, get engaged. It's been like 5 years normal relationship time. And there's something that you get, and sometimes we get this at the beginning when we ask that question about how are people living differently. You have better relationships, don't you? When you relate to people at a deeper level as human beings, when you want to respect their will, at a whole other level of connection. And I guess we just got to get it on a t-shirt eventually. Libertarians make better lovers. Can we do that? But it's true. And when you're in a relationship with someone that you share this understanding with and you share this passion with, it meets, I mean, I don't read a lot of romance novels, but any standard I've ever had in my mind of what a relationship could be is met now because of this. She got me back into yoga. Actually into it seriously for the first time. By the way, I mentioned this earlier, but there's one other thing I got to say for the guys who are here, who because this is still a male-dominated movement. A lot of guys are anxious about going to a yoga class for the first time. Don't be. Or you're anxious about being judged by other men around you. 2 words, all that goes away. Yoga pants. All right, that's all you ever have to say. Escape all judgment for being there. So, it's true that when you get this, a whole other world opens up for you. So who are we really? In this context that we see right now at this point in history, This 1/3%. In the country where, at least by head count, there are more people who understand freedom than anywhere else in the world. Not necessarily per capita, but by head count. Nowhere in the world are there more in one political body than this. And nowhere in the world is there a better freedom community and a more active, vibrant community of freedom activists than in the United States. And to appreciate the opportunity that we have. Because when you get this kind of emotional freedom that I'm talking about, there's no obligation anymore. There's no have to, there's no guilt, there's no shame. You are impervious to all of that. And it allows you to see a path that we can illuminate for the rest of humanity. We are the visionaries, the dreamers, and the lovers. So here's to us. Thank you very much. So people, if it's not too late, I have no idea. My sense of, when you get pulled over,
Yeah.
and time kind of slows down, and then it slows down for 2 hours on the side of the road. I don't know how long that was. I try to make it quick. Normally this takes about 4 hours. You're welcome. So I'm happy to take questions, but usually, hey, live free, be happy, help others do the same. Pretty straightforward, right? So I just have one other administrative note. We have no books for sale. They're all free because they were paid for by people who contributed to our Indiegogo campaign last year and supported us doing this, and everybody who's donated along the way to help us get here. But if you'd like to give a contribution to help us, well,
Get our trailer
now it's
back.
getting our trailer back and paying a handful of tickets. Macy got her first failure to comply citation, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm really excited about that.
You gotta get your badge now.
So, are there any questions? When can we go home? When can we eat?
Hey, are you guys going the marriage license route
No,
in Asper and
no,
No.
you're gonna exchange your own?
no. Government
Of
is not being invited to our wedding.
That's an easy one.
Are we invited?
Normally,
Yeah, everybody's invited except government.
normally we get really hard questions. But what if people aren't smart enough? But what if people are really evil?
Yeah.
No? What if people aren't evolving?
So, say we overtake the United States by persuasion that freedom is inevitable. What stops the next country that doesn't get it yet from coming in and trying to... Is that a good one?
The national security question.
Yes.
Yes. If it wasn't for government providing all of these wonderful protection services, what could we ever possibly do to protect ourselves? And the answer is really simple, actually. But you have to first understand what war really is. And we've been fooled. Again, just the assumption of all the propaganda we've been subject to tells us that countries attack other countries. It was the war between this country and this country. Bullshit. Governments use war and violence to expand their protection rackets. Simple as that. Why is Afghanistan the graveyard of empires? Because despite the fact that they have their own ideological, judge for yourself, whatever that is, where they're governed in whatever way they are religiously, locally, they are a country that essentially refuses to be governed. Now, there's one other great thing about where we are in human history right now that renders that argument pretty silly. The way that people are connected now makes the kind of wars that we used to have impossible. And I say this as a veteran of the global war on terror who tortured people in Fallujah, that yes, the scope of the global war on terror is horrific. And as a veteran activist of Iraq Veterans Against the War, it was really sad that we couldn't change the policy during the war and that the anti-war movement was revealed to be an anti-Bush movement when Obama started getting traction, and then when, hey, Remember, he's killed more children with drone strikes than all other Nobel Peace Prize winners combined. It's quite a feat. And it was sad to see that we changed policy less than nothing. We had Obama trying to keep troops in Iraq longer than the Bush administration had negotiated. But people will learn from their mistakes, even if they can't admit while they're making them that they're making them. And when Obama wanted to get boots on the ground in Syria, it was soldiers holding up those silly placards on social media that said, I didn't enlist to fight for Al-Qaeda in Syria. As the book explains, governments will always get away with as much war as they can. And it's not about the war or the destruction as much as it is about the control and the exploitation and the flow of money around war. But in Syria, when they couldn't put boots on the ground, they still sent money in through the State Department and the CIA and all the back channels and all the groups that they were funding there. But in a world where I have a device in my pocket with the computing power that used to take a building to house connected to everyone else on the planet who has one of these, what happens when they try to get a war with Iran? And I can Skype anybody in that country. Like, really? You all want to kill us? Is that why you're getting nukes? Huh. That's funny. You simply cannot dress up millions of gullible young men in silly costumes and have them meet in the middle of a field where none of them live and kill each other because they're wearing different colors. Inconceivable. Yes, I know what that word means. But on a more fundamental principle level, if you understand that governments use violence to expand their protection rackets, what's the best defense against invasion? Refusing to be governed. Because if you accept that as, why would it be bad to have your country invaded by another government? I mean, here I think we should welcome, the Canadians couldn't pull off this massive, ridiculous bureaucracy. At least some of it would have to go away. Why do we say that being invaded by another country or another government is bad?
I think
Because they want to keep what they got.
Because they're going to govern you! Like your government is doing now! This is why the principled founders of this country were against the concept of a standing army. What does a standing army signal to your neighboring invader, would-be invader? Oh, these people like paying taxes, don't they? Yeah, we're going to take over there. Now, a lot of people go, but Adam, what about the Chinese? Well, gee, have you noticed how they're kind of, with the American government and financial system's help, already taking over? And if we lived in a free society, and they wanted to roll their tanks down our streets, I would say, yeah. Shop at our stores, enjoy our fine dining establishments. But the minute you send a tax collector to my door, something's going to change. Or I'm not even going to comply. And I think nonviolent resistance, even on that large scale, as Gandhi demonstrated, is far more effective. But what's real defense? Refusing to be governed by anyone.
Self-love.
Excuse me?
Self-love.
Essentially. All right, so that was a good hard one.
Do you think the increase in the frequency of the universe is waking people up because the higher the frequency is, the emotions are love and caring? And if so, why isn't it waking up everybody?
Man, that sounds like a lot of hippy-dippy shit.
It is.
Have you been doing too much acid?
No, but acid increases your frequency.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, if I may, offer what to me I think is my scientific understanding of what the observations that we see that tempts us to some of these less scientific metaphors maybe about what we see. And don't get me wrong, I understand the science that is behind that. I understand the scientific observations that lead to those conclusions. But I think in a even more fundamental sense, it's inherent to the nature of life and biology and entropy to seek harmony. That humanity naturally seeks harmony. Life naturally seeks harmony. Multi-cell organisms beat out single-celled organisms. Civilizations that cooperate in commerce dominate and are more successful than those that don't. Human beings who are able to elicit cooperation rather than conflict at least now in today's society, clearly, but I would really argue throughout human existence, we're the ones that were able to prosper, survive, and reproduce, if nothing else than for that exact reason. And in that sense, the harmony of the human mind is so rich and so complex that we really can't, it's beyond the comprehension of our own mind. What this device is able to be conscious of is not even its complete inner workings. And that tempts us to say, you know, when we live as emotional creatures and we have, you know, all of the positive, negative, and beautiful emotional reactions that we have to this incredibly rich experience, that the only way we can capture this is through metaphor and because it's such overwhelming beauty. And for me, I've just, you know, by virtue of being in this line of work as long as I have had the luxury of being able to step back and see that bigger picture and appreciate that, like, for example, right now, about the inevitability of this, of a stateless and voluntary society. We are living in the most peaceful times in human history right now.
Oh, yeah.
Where you as an individual are less likely to be subject to violence at the hands of another human being than ever before.
Do you think that's because back then the frequency of the universe was way lower, so everybody's thinking that the hatred?
I don't think you even have to go to connect it to the frequency of the universe. I think it's more direct, and I think it's faster than that. If the frequency of the universe is shifting, it's on a different timeline than what we're seeing here, because what we're seeing here is so much faster.
Yeah, it is fast.
And the way that people are coming together and just, again, when you step back and appreciate everywhere we've been and everywhere we're going, it's so much more beautiful. And you have so much more, you know, a deeper passion for what you're doing, because it's not, again, it's not that obligation. It's not that have to. It's a get to. It's an opportunity. That beautiful dance forward that we're all engaged in. So I think that's as good a note as we're going to end on. Please come grab some books and stickers. I'll have them out by the time you get up from your table. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, this is the second one.
I've seen like 4. I saw 3 when we were in Tampa.
Manchester, Connecticut.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
All right. Did you go to Port Fest?
I did go to Port Fest, but I was only there for 5 hours.
Oh, right on.
It didn't have. It was, you know, a pretty big event.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Well, please take as many as you can need for your share.
What I think?
First 9 pages.
Yeah. Oh, hey, these are from our sign stash. Well, I can sign them.